So I got an email and from someone that listened to the podcast, and he asked an interesting question that kind of leads into a little bit kind of what we're talking about later today. So he was asking me about Elite Prospects, HockeyDB, and these kind of tracking sites where you have your points up and the games you played, what teams you played for, and all that. So if you don't know what Elite Prospects is or HockeyDB, they're just basically player profile sites that show your stats and your games played and all that, and then they can show some team stats and whatever. So it's a little bit like an NHL.com for all the leagues that exist that are somewhat known from the AAA level all the way up to the NHL or whatever. So this guy he sent me an email and he asked, my son is constantly poring over Elite Prospects. A few of his teammates have updated their profile with photos, height, weight, date of birth, etc. I've checked it out and it's pretty extensive. So he said before he committed to his team this year, his coach was puzzled that he couldn't find his kid on these hockey databases that he uses. And he mentioned Instat, that's another one. He's basically just asking, what do you guys make of these things? So he's not asking about like specific scouting services or websites, but kind of what do you think about, or what do you make of these like Elite Prospects, HockeyDB type stuff? Because kids, a lot of times even I'll see kids in their Instagram profile, they'll have their Elite Prospects hockey link like to their personal profile. Like I don't know who makes them because I just have one, I didn't make it. But there's one for everyone. There's one for every hockey player kid. And even on mine, like there's a picture on mine. It shows my stats for stuff, and it's like I didn't do that. So I don't know who did it, but so they're out there, and then kids use them, right? They use them as like a promotional tool or whatever. So I think he's just kind of asking your general thoughts on sites like that, whether it's HockeyDB or Elite Prospects or whatever other ones that I'm sure are out there. But for kids, let's say, or for parents, or how scouts use them, or how teams might use them, or whatever.
So I'm answering this?
Yeah. Yeah, here you go.
Yeah. Whatever.
Yeah.
This is the kind of stuff that means nothing to me. A piece of paper doesn't really explain what a hockey player looks like unless the goals are, the point totals are absolutely crazy. It's like whatever, like, and who knows how accurate this stuff is anyways.
Right. Yeah.
Like, number one, so in youth hockey, I can tell you right now, for sure, if someone has 200 points, let's say 100 goals and 100 assists, they probably have somewhere around 200 points, give or take, because someone sniveled and who knows who got the points right, like, and if you got, so that I would say that kid's probably a point getter. If someone's got 15 points, then he's got somewhere between 10 and 15, like, give or take, right? Or 17 or 12 or something like that. So it's like somewhere in the vicinity, because there's no ref in youth hockey that gets all the points correct.
Yep.
Because there's usually 2 or 3 refs on the ice, not 4, and they don't have the guys upstairs taking stats like accurately. So who knows who even scored the goal half the time? Yep. That's the truth. So that's that. But okay, so that's what you're going to get. So after that, what does it mean? I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. So you had 12 goals, 24 assists. That's great. Like, I know that there are some people that will go and look at some of these sites just to see what in the vicinity, what type of player they have. So, like, meaning if I live in Ontario and I want to go to BC to play, and there's a junior team from a junior team out west, they're going to look, well, let's see what kind of points he has in junior B or midget or something like that. And it's like, oh, he's got 39 points or 78 points. Like, 78 probably looks better. We'll probably take a better chance. Maybe there's something there to him.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it means nothing, because the eye test and playing the game within the game in front of someone is what counts. So do people scout from, and I can't give you an honest or an accurate answer on this, do people scout from your hockey DBs and stuff? Like, I don't think so. Maybe in Europe, when you're bringing guys over, they look there at your professional and junior totals, that maybe that gives an indication if you can get points. But in general, like, I don't think people are scouting from the HockeyDB. So the information that's on there, in my opinion, is not that important. So it might be interesting as a player to see, oh, I'm on the internet.
Right.
and I've got points and where I stack up and I'm the top scorer, whatever, that might be something that's interesting to an individual player. But as far as anyone else, I don't think it matters whatsoever.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it's the at best, it's to me, it's just like a crude tool that some people might use in the circumstances that you're talking about, right? Where it's like, yeah, I can check out who you played for and what you're doing, but it doesn't really give me an indication of how you play the game. And the biggest thing to me is it looks like, because I remember when I was a kid in high school and younger, when there's a website or something that you can use to show your points or how many people have viewed your profile or whatever it is, then it's just another one of those like ego being a beauty cool things, right? Where it doesn't actually mean much towards your actual game. And I'm sure somebody can find the exception of where someone was scouted off elite prospects and they ended up playing on some team and did great and whatever. But I'm talking about generally speaking, it's not, there's no scouts that I talk to or that you talk to ever reference, oh, I saw their profile on elite prospects and it said that. Nobody says that. So for kids especially, it just turns into like a little bit of a Hollywood show my profile
Well,
kind
the
of
thing
thing.
that the only thing, in my opinion, that if you look up a player, all it shows you is his points, which is, and I know a lot of people think that that's the most important part of hockey, but it's actually not. So that's the part. It's like, okay, you got some points, but no one knows why.
Yeah, and you know what's funny about that? So we were talking about the other day. We were talking about Rick DiPietro. So if anyone doesn't remember him, he went first overall, 2000 or 2001. He's a goalie, and we were talking about him because he's still getting paid on a contract since then, which is crazy. But that's another topic. But I was noticing because we looked at his HockeyDB because I was like, or his elite prospects, whichever one it was, and because you can see where he played and whatever, and I wanted to see where he ended up after he stopped playing the NHL. And he played for the U.S. national development team before he got drafted, and his stats weren't like crazy. It's like they were good, but they were very good, but they weren't like, wow, this guy is Connor McDavid who had 200 points when he played for the Marlies in his draft year. It's like that's not. It wasn't that. It was just these are good, good stats, and that is what it is. I could find 15 other goalies that had stats like this that played for really good teams, right? So why did he get drafted first overall? It's not because of his stats, man. It's not because of his elite prospects or whatever. It's like when somebody went and watched him, and when they played, it was like, oh,
100%.
this guy's the real deal or whatever,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
So that's one of those things that just like the media shit, like we were talking about last week or whatever. It's one of those things you can just get caught up on that doesn't actually mean much.
Yeah.
And the smaller your world is, the more important something like that becomes, right?
Yeah, I'm just all those sites. I mean, this is what I'll always say is people that have these sites, whether it's the HockeyDB or it's a scouting report and all that stuff, it's someone's making a little bit of money somewhere, and good for them. It's cool. And for some players, this is, I'm not being negative, this is the highlight of their life, is they get to be on HockeyDB and someone or whatever it is, and they can see, so everyone in the world can see their stats and look at I'm pretty cool or whatever, and that's cool. Like kids are into that stuff, right? I mean, there was other people that I know that started sites where if you send them video, here's one, right? You send their videos of your games, and they'll go out and they'll send it out to colleges and stuff for you. It's like same thing, right? It's like what a lot of people are hoping is that someone else will do the work for them, or the reality of like, you know, if scouts or people aren't doing their job properly, that you just need exposure. And you know, everyone's missing the boat, so I got to find these different things to promote how great I am. But the reality is that there are people watching every day, and even in Adam and Pee Wee, right? Yeah, or whatever they call it now, U6, U13, 12, U11, 8, 9, whatever. Everyone talks. Like what happens is everyone talks about the best players, even though you're not getting scouted in U9 or U10. There's talk. So people know in general who the best players are. It doesn't need to be on a piece of paper. And then as you get older, you're scouted. And do people miss? I mean, we got one guy that skates with me right now on the junior team that I've talked to a couple teams about because I think he's a good hockey player. And I asked him, I said, you didn't played in Toronto? And I said, what happened? Like, how come you didn't get drafted? I'm curious. Because I don't know. I was kind of told I was going to go in the 4th round, 3rd round, 4th, 5th round, but never got drafted. I said, okay, cool. I'll talk to a couple teams for you. Apparently, there's a couple schools that are pretty hot on him right now. But then, having said all that, when he's doing stuff with me, he looks really good. But maybe in a game, he's not what he presents himself in a practice.
Yep.
So you can shoot the hell out of a puck. That's good. But do you get those chances in a game? Does the whole game surround being a hockey player? What are you missing? So the scouting part is the part. That's people have to see you live. Like all this other stuff is, I'm very almost negative on this stuff because it just doesn't matter. And my friends that are in the business agree with me 100%. I've got one of my friends that's Scotty Rex. We were just talking the other day, scouts for LA, and he said, "Oh, I forgot to tell you this. He listens to. He goes, I look forward to listening to the podcast every Sunday."
Really?
Yeah, scouts for LA. Great guy, and he gives you some really good perspectives on scouting and stuff. It's great.
Yeah.
I was standing with Glenn Wesley the other night at a game. You don't really know him, eh?
I don't know him. No, I know he played and all that, but
he was my NHL draft year, but he was a late birthday. So he ended up playing 20 years in the NHL, and he's now the player development for St. Louis. So we had a couple connections there. We talked for one full game, and really neat, quietly, like not. I guess just because he wasn't flashy, but he played 1,436 games, I think it is. Yeah. That's a lot of hockey. 20 years, asked him about injuries and stuff, and then just talk to him a little bit about what he sees and all that stuff. It's just very interesting, like little things, right? So here's the thing, right? It meant nothing in our conversation, but for me, it was like, this is what scouts see. Okay, so we're watching a game. It was Guelph against, who did they play the last game against? North Bay. And he was saying, he just, oh, geez, this guy he's got to get better handoffs there. That's what he noticed in a game. How many people are watching a game and watching a goalie, defenseman, goalie handoff? Right?
Yeah.
So he sees little things like that, and that's just the experience, right? So that's sometimes you'll see. You're never going to get that on a piece of paper that says he got 12 goals and 12 assists.
For sure.
So it's really interesting, man.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say on it, just because we should move on, is you mentioned the word exposure, which I want to stick on for a second because everyone's very worried about they need to get the most exposure possible. And what people need to understand, if you're playing at a AAA or you're playing at the highest level in your area for your age or whatever, you're getting exposure. Like you don't need to do any more than you're already doing unless you're not good enough. If you're not good enough and you have to go shop yourself out places, that just means you're not good enough. Because so I went to a game on Sunday.
Good enough right now.
Yeah, right now. Right? So for the time that you're playing right now, there's people there that are watching always. Yep. I was at a minor hockey game on Sunday.
Yep.
Scout, talked to him for 20 minutes watching, and you'd never know. He was a scout. He's about yay tall. He's got a forward's hat on, a puffy coat, eating French fries. You would never know he's a scout that's there to actually, he will be the one responsible for drafting players. He's not the area scout. He's the head guy.
Yeah.
You'd never know.
Oh, he's a GM.
Yeah, right? So you wouldn't even know.
Yeah.
So he's there watching, scouting these kids, and this is a small market, like minor hockey team we're not in Toronto, but there's people there, man. And then that guy is going to talk, right? He's going to talk to whoever he talks to, and you're going to get the exposure, right? So that's another element of the elite prospects thing. It's like you think you need to update your profile picture and all this stuff because this is going to be my selling feature here. People are going to come and look at this, and they might, but it's not
because
it's
of
a
that.
very, very, very small component, if any, of what people even check out when they're coming to look for you.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I've heard this several times is this. I think we've talked about this before. Is when people would ask me about, does my son need an agent? Does your son have an agent and all that stuff? And the year before he was drafted, he did not have an agent. And people were like, "Oh, but are you going to get one?" I'm like, "Yeah, when the time is right." And they said, "Well, yeah, but what about exposure and promotion?" And if you think that an agent's there to promote you, that's not what they're there for. Because your promotion is every time you step on the ice, every time you practice. That's what you're promoting. And if you can't promote yourself on the ice and having good games or having good habits, then no matter what an agent or someone says, the eye test is number one, right?
Yep, for sure.
You got to impress people when you play. So you can
Yeah.
tell people say, "Oh no, this guy's the greatest," but every time you watch him play, if he's average or he's missing a whole bunch of things, it's like, well, I can't do anything as an agent.
Yeah, exactly.
you
Yeah.
know,
You have
so
to play.
you have
And
to be able to play.
and-
So the bottom line, it always comes down to you have to be a good player. That's
Yeah.
the bottom line.
I know. And that was a funny thing. I was talking with the general manager that was scouting there on the weekend. And every question he was asking me about the players he was watching had to do with can they play the game? Are they good at hockey? They didn't care about what are their habits away from the rink? He didn't ask me about any of that. All that is secondary. It's first when I'm watching kids this young, can they play or not? Can they play in our league one day? If they can't, then all the other stuff doesn't matter. They have to be able to play, and then we can worry about the other stuff after that, you know?